Ireland. How people live in Europe's greenest landscapes. Travel documentary. While turmoil and fracturing trust are sweeping across the Atlantic, Ireland stands out as one of the few places that has retained a remarkable sense of stability. Without flashy slogans, this island nation impresses with a profound way of life where identity, community, and a connection to the past are still evident in today's existence. What has enabled Ireland to maintain its inner strength and tranquility amidst a world seemingly losing its balance? Join us as we explore a mysterious and profound Ireland. Ireland is an island nation in northwestern Europe, located in the Atlantic Ocean to the west of Great Britain. Between the two lie the Irish Sea, the North Channel, and St. George's Channel. This location has shaped much of Ireland's character. The Atlantic brings shifting weather, strong coastal winds, and a landscape marked by cliffs, peninsulas, green plains, mountains, and inland lakes. With over 4,500 meters of coastline, Ireland's geography forms the core foundation for the development of its distinctive maritime centers and communities. But Ireland's identity is shaped not only by its landscape, but also by traditions that reach back thousands of years. Many believe Halloween originated in the United States, but its origins can be traced back over 2,000 years to Ireland and the ancient Celtic festival of some kind. For the Celts, this marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of the darker half-year. It is also believed that this is the time when the boundary between the living and the dead becomes thinnest. Spirits are thought to move more freely in the world, making Samhain not just a seasonal festival, but also a time full of mystery and spiritual significance. One of Ireland's most enduring legends claims that St. Patrick drove all snakes from the island. The story has been told for generations and remains a familiar part of the country's cultural memory. However, scientifically speaking, Ireland has never had a natural snake population due to being surrounded by frigid cedar since the Ice Age, preventing reptiles from migrating there. Even more remarkably, this is the only country in the world to use a musical instrument as its national symbol. The harp appears on Irish coins, official state documents, and passports. The differences have shown that in Ireland, music is not just a part of the culture, but also a part of the national identity. Ireland is also home to hurling, a traditional sport with roots stretching back more than 3,000 years. Often described as the fastest field sport in the world, it combines speed, precision, and physical intensity in a way few games can match. In earlier times, hurling was more than competition. It was also seen as a way for ancient warriors to build strength, sharpen reflexes, and prepare for combat. Today, hurling remains one of the clearest examples of the continuity between modern Ireland and the nation's long-standing cultural traditions. In Ireland, there is a land shaped by the harsh Atlantic weather, ancient stone blocks, and long-standing local traditions. County Clare. Standing majestically on the edge of Western Europe, the cliffs of Moherray are a symbol of the primal strength that has shaped the resilient character of the island nation of Ireland. Rising more than 700 feet above the Atlantic and stretching for nearly 9 miles along the coast, they create one of the most commanding natural scenes in Ireland. At O'Brien's Tower, the cliffs reach their highest point at about 702 feet above sea level, twice the height of the Statue of Liberty. The rock layers visible here today were formed roughly 320 million years ago. Continuing that chapter of geological history is Birr National Park. Its gray limestone surface, quiet atmosphere, and strange natural patterns give the area an almost otherworldly presence. At Mullamore, the park's most iconic mountain, the limestone appears twisted and folded in bizarre ways, revealing geological upheavals from millions of years ago. Throughout the Birr region, vast slabs of limestone are dissected by deep fissures, creating sheltered spaces where a surprisingly rich ecosystem thrives. For thousands of years, local communities adapted to this dry, rocky terrain. One of the clearest examples is the region's tradition of winter grazing, known locally as winter AJ. Unlike most farming systems where animals are moved uphill in summer, farmers in the Buran bring cattle onto the limestone uplands during winter. The stone holds warmth, the grass remains accessible, and the land continues to feed livestock through the colder months. The historical flow of the Clare region comes to a halt at Bunratty Castle. Built in 1425 by the McNamara family, it later fell into the hands of the O'Brien family, the most powerful Earl of Toland in Western Ireland. The thick stone walls, narrow spiral staircase, and expansive central hall reveal the defensive logic of a watchtower, while the interior houses one of Europe's finest collections of medieval furniture and ornaments, accurately recreating the living spaces of former Gaelic and Norman aristocrats. Located at the southwesternmost point of Clare County, where the Shannon River flows into the Atlantic Ocean, is Loop Head. The lighthouse here faces a vast meeting point of sea, wind, and moving water. This is the final point where Clare extends into the sea, where the power of the waves and wind can be felt distinctly. In the town of Lees Dun Varna, local tradition takes a more human form through the famous matchmaking festival held each year for more than 160 years. What began as a practical social gathering for rural communities grew into the largest matchmaking festival in Europe. This unique cultural practice helps single farmers find partners, attracting tens of thousands of participants each year. The city of Galway offers a different kind of energy, often regarded as the cultural capital of Ireland. It is a city where history, music, and daily life seem to move together. The most prominent landmark is Galway Cathedral, one of the most impressive limestone cathedrals in Europe. Blending Renaissance and Gothic influences, it rises above the city with a distinctive green dome that immediately stands out against the sky. Port Galway has long been an integral part of Galway's identity, connecting trade, tourism, and local life with the wider Atlantic world. Just off the harbor lies Mutton Island, a small island connected to the mainland by a causeway. Once renowned for its historic lighthouse and coastal isolation, it now also showcases Galway's modern side as the location of the city's water treatment system. Venturing deep into the heart of Connemara, Kylemore Abbey opens up a more intimate and emotionally rich dimension within the multifaceted landscape of Galway. Often described as the most romantic castle in Ireland, it sits beside the tranquil waters of Lake Pollackapole, where its reflection creates a serene, almost surreal beauty. The main building was completed in 1867 when Mitchell Henry, a wealthy businessman, built it as a gift for his wife Margaret. Designed in the neo-Gothic style, the castle is marked by pointed arch windows, elegant towers, and a refined combination of pale granite and gray limestone. Its appearance feels grand but never cold. Within Victoria's wall gardens, spanning over 6 acres and divided by a natural stream, it remains one of the last remaining large wall gardens in Ireland. The greenhouses feature intelligent heating systems dating back to the 19th century. The story of Kylemore changed in 1920 when it became home to Benedictine nuns who fled in Belgium during World War I. From that point on, the estate took on a spiritual life as well, becoming a place of prayer, education, and continuity. For decades, Kylemore was also home to a prestigious international boarding school for girls. Although the school closed in 2010, many former students from around the world still return, considering Kylemore a second home filled with childhood memories. Located in Galway Bay, the Aran Islands are a timeless oasis where Irish cultural values and traditional ways of life have been preserved intact for generations. This is one of the few places where Gaeilge, the Irish language, is still used in everyday life by both children and older generations. Here, language is more than communication. It is a living connection to ancestry, memory, and belonging. The most unique geological highlight on Ennismore Island is Pol Knobby Paste, also known as the Wormhole, a rectangular limestone sinkhole resembling a man-made structure. Its unusual appearance and rugged terrain have made this wonder the venue for the Red Bull Cliff diving competition, creating an interesting connection between ancient geological heritage and modern sporting life. A different image appears on Enos Wyre, where the rusting wreck of the Plashy still rests on the rocky shore. The cargo ship ran aground in 1960, and over the decades, its weathered red hull against the pale stone has become one of the island's most surreal and unforgettable sights. Perhaps the most striking feature is the vast network of dry stone walls. Built without mortar and stretching for miles, these walls divide the land into geometrically shaped small fields. They were created to protect the thin layer of man-made soil from being washed away by the Atlantic winds, demonstrating the extraordinary effort that generations of island inhabitants have invested simply to make this land habitable. Known as the Kingdom, County Kerry is where the primal power of nature and the depth of history converge to create the most majestic facets of the island nation of Ireland. This is most clearly demonstrated in Conwy National Park. Established in 1932 as the country's first national park, it later earned recognition as a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. At the center of the park stands Muckross House, a grand Victorian mansion completed in 1843. With 65 rooms and gardens that open into the wider landscape, it gives the park a sense of elegance without taking away from its natural setting. That atmosphere deepens at Muckross Abbey, a 15th-century Franciscan monastery. The most unforgettable sight is the massive yew tree rising from the center of the cloister. The most mysterious feature here is a giant yew tree located right in the middle of the monastery's courtyard. Local legend says that this tree is as old as the monastery itself. Not far away, Ross Castle stands along the shore of Laughlin, its tower rising with the solid confidence of a late medieval stronghold. Built in the 15th century, it is remembered as the last fortress in Munster to resist the forces of Oliver Cromwell, adding a note of political history to the park's natural calm. Torque Falls marks a different state of nature, with water cascading about 65 feet over moss-covered rocks and through dense forests. The scene feels vividly alive and authentic, shaped by constant movement, layered sound, and the deep green of the surrounding woodland. This is the Dingle Peninsula. Once named the most beautiful place on Earth by National Geographic, it is a place that feels both exposed and deeply rooted, shaped by weather. At the heart of the peninsula is Slee Head Drive, widely regarded as one of the most spectacular coastal routes in the world. The road curves along steep edges, passing golden beaches, dark rock, and sweeping views of the Atlantic and the Blasset Islands. The peninsula ends at Cape du Nord, the westernmost point of mainland Ireland and also of Europe. Here, the landscape carries not only dramatic views, but also traces of deep history, including ancient agam stones, marked with the earliest known form of Irish writing. At Connor Pass, Ireland's highest mountain pass, the road cuts through rugged highlands with jagged rocks and deep glacial lakes formed by the movement of glaciers long ago. Together, these places make the Dingle Peninsula feel larger than its scale. Far out in the Atlantic, Skellig Michael rises from the sea as a steep rock island. Recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the island is home to one of the oldest and most remote monastic settlements in Europe. The Skellig Michael Monastery sits about 590 feet above sea level, reached by a long climb of ancient stone steps cut into the island itself. Built sometime between the 6th and 8th centuries, it reflects a form of spiritual life defined by endurance, discipline, and separation from the everyday world. Right before our eyes are the Kerry Cliffs. As the highest and steepest cliffs along the Kerry shoreline, they rise more than 1,000 feet above sea level, standing even higher than the cliffs of Moher. The cliffs were formed from old red sandstone more than 400 million years ago, preserving traces of the Devonian period when Ireland lay much closer to the equator. Just offshore lies Puffin Island, a small uninhabited island that serves as an important seabird habitat. This area is also an important habitat for puffins. The dense nesting communities of these birds not only enrich biodiversity, but also create a vibrant ecological symbol for the entire coastal region. As the largest county in Ireland, Cork carries a scale and presence all its own. The city centre is Cork City, built along the River Lee, where the historic district sits on an island between two waterways. With over 30 bridges spanning the city, it has earned the nickname City of Bridges. Blarney Castle is a prime example of a fortified 15th century Irish tower house constructed from local limestone with thick walls and a rigorous defensive system including murder holes and meticulations, where the famous Blarney Stone is located. This structure not only showcased the power of the McCarthy family, but also optimized observation and protection from above. Farther down the coast, Cove brings a more emotional chapter to Cork's story. With its brightly painted hillside houses rising above the harbor, the town has the warmth of a postcard image. Yet, it also holds one of the most poignant moments in modern maritime history. In 1912, it was the final port of call for the Titanic before the ship entered the Atlantic on its ill-fated voyage. That history grows even heavier at Spike Island, often called the Alcatraz of Ireland. Over the centuries, the island has served as a monastery, a military fortress, and later one of the largest prisons in the world during the Victorian era. Few places in Ireland contain so many layers of confinement, control, and survival within such a small space. Then the coast opens fully at Mizzen Head, the southernmost point of mainland Ireland. Here, a suspension bridge stretches across a narrow chasm above crashing water. The county has long been associated with a strong rebel spirit, a name rooted in Cork's historic support for independence movements and resistance. Mallow Castle adds another layer to Cork's story. The site brings together two very different structures, each reflecting a different period in Irish history. The earlier castle was built in the late 16th century around 1590 by Sir Thomas Norris. Designed as a fortified defensive stronghold, it included battlements and watchtowers built to project both security and control. After being burned during the conflict of 1689, it was left as a roofless stone ruin. Today, its weathered walls, softened by moss and age, give the site a stark and haunting presence. A very different expression of power appeared in the 1830s, when the Jeffson family built a new residence beside the old castle. Designed in the baronial style, the house introduced larger windows, long reception spaces, and the elegance associated with Ireland's landed class during the 19th century. Placed next to the remains of the earlier fortress, it creates a striking contrast between defense and display, survival and refinement. More than 12 acres of gardens surround the castle, including Victorian walled gardens and walking paths that follow the Blackwater River. Within the castle park lies a rare herd of pure white deer. They create a serene and unique beauty for the land, making it not only steeped in history, but also full of life. Nestled among Ireland's oldest lands, Meath emerges as a place where power, memory, and identity have together shaped the history of an entire nation. Meath people have always taken pride in their history. Crown symbols appear everywhere, from restaurant signs to sports uniforms. They consider themselves the guardians of the island nation's soul. Meath has long been one of the main centers of Ireland's horse industry, with breeding, training, and racing forming an important part of local life. The county is closely associated with world-class racish horses, giving it a reputation that extends far beyond Ireland itself. The core value of Meath lies in the depths of its prehistoric history. New Grange, one of Europe's greatest monuments, dating back to around 3200 BC. This structure far surpasses the Giza pyramids in age and is not merely a burial structure, but a vivid testament to the astonishing architectural skill and astronomical knowledge of ancient peoples. The structure itself is a circular mound about 279 feet in diameter, surrounded by 97 large curbstones. Along its outer edge, the tomb is lined with striking white quartz stones brought from the Wicklow Mountains, nearly 62 miles away. Above the narrow entrance is a small opening called the roof box. This is the most important detail that allows sunlight to penetrate deep inside the tomb chamber. A passage about 62 feet long leads inward to the center, ending in a cross-shaped burial chamber with a corbelled stone roof that remains dry and structurally sound after more than 5 millennia. Tara Hill holds a special historical significance, having once been the center of supreme power in ancient Ireland, witnessing the coronation ceremonies of 142 high kings. At its center stands the leaf file or stone of destiny, rising from the inauguration mound. According to tradition, the stone would cry out when touched by the rightful king, making it one of the most sacred symbols of kingship in Irish legend. It was also closely tied to the mythical Tuatha De Danann, adding another layer of spiritual authority to the site. Not far from it lies the Mound of the Hostages, a prehistoric passage tomb dating to around 3000 BC, far older than the kings who later claimed Tara as their seat. Tara Hill is a place where every step we take touches the blood and glory of ancient kings. Within the network of strategic strongholds along the Bow Valley, Trim Castle stands as an unshakable historical landmark, marking a turning in the shaping of medieval Ireland's political map. This is the largest, most important, and most magnificent Anglo-Norman castle still standing in Ireland. Its most striking feature is the keep, a massive 3-story stone structure with an unusually complex design. Rather than taking a simple square form, it was built in a cruciform shape with 20 angles, allowing defenders to command wider views across the surrounding ground and reduce the blind spots an attacker might exploit. Encircling the site are the curtain walls, which once enclosed a vast defensive complex, reinforced by round towers and a heavily protected gatehouse. These walls still convey the sheer scale of the castle even after more than 800 years. Their survival is a clear reminder of the sophistication of medieval stone construction at its height. In the past, Trim Castle was not just a military fortress, but also a miniature city. Inside its walls were blacksmiths' workshops, stables, warehouses, and living quarters for hundreds of soldiers. Within the network of heritage sites in Meath County, Slane Castle occupies a distinct position thanks to its exquisite blend of aristocratic solemnity and the free spirit of global popular culture. Known not only for its architecture and Slane whiskey, but also as Ireland's true home of rock and roll. Over the years, it has become one of the country's most iconic concert venues, hosting legendary performances by U2, Queen, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, and Harry Styles. The present castle was designed in the late 18th century by noted architects including James Wyatt and Francis Johnston. Built in the Gothic Revival style, it combines cylindrical towers, pointed arch windows, and a refined sense of balance that gives the structure both strength and elegance. It is at once an aristocratic landmark, a symbol of cultural reinvention, and a site where history has learned how to speak in a much louder voice. Leap Castle in County Awali is often considered the most haunted castle in the world. Behind its stone walls lies a history steeped in violence, betrayal, and some of the darkest stories in ancient Irish history. The most famous story revolves around the top room of the main tower, where a brother allegedly murdered his younger brother, a priest, in the middle of Mass in front of their family. That act became a tragedy that shaped the castle's history and contributed to its grim reputation. Over time, other stories also spread. Tourists and locals alike have long recounted tales of a woman in a red dress wielding a sharp iron dagger believed to be the spirit of a mother seeking revenge after the death of her son. They also claim to have seen two young girls playing near the spiral staircase, one of whom is said to have fallen from the top and died there. It is believed that the land on which the castle was built was originally a site for sacrificial rituals of the ancient Celts. Therefore, this land has always been hungry for blood, leading to successive tragedies for any family that has controlled it for the past 800 years. Located along the River Swere in the southeast is the city of Waterford, the oldest city in Ireland, founded by the Vikings in 914 AD. One of the area's most remarkable landmarks is the Ardmore Round Tower, built in the 12th century, rising about 95 feet. Its stone bands divide the structure into 4 distinct levels, and in earlier centuries, it served as a bell tower, a lookout, and a final place of refuge during Viking raids. The site also includes St. Declan's Oratory, a small stone building from around the 8th or 9th century believed to stand over the grave of St. Declan. It is the oldest and most sacred part of the complex. Inside the cathedral, 2 agam stones remain as further evidence of the transition from pre-Christian Ireland to the early Christian world. Here, the Waterford Crystal Workshop is a globally renowned center for handcrafted crystal making. Glass blowing and crystal cutting are still performed with the highest precision, connecting Waterford's historical heritage with a vibrant artistic tradition. Strategically located on the East Coast, Dublin stands as a symbol of historical continuity. As the capital of Ireland, Dublin brings together ancient Viking roots, a UNESCO literary legacy, and the pace of a modern European city. It is a place where the country's political, cultural, and historical layers meet most visibly. Among its most important landmarks is St. Patrick's Cathedral, the largest and tallest cathedral in Ireland, and one of the most significant Gothic buildings in Dublin. Built in 1191, it stands on the site where St. Patrick is traditionally believed to have baptized converts, around 450. For more than 800 years, the cathedral has served not only as a place of worship, but as a stone record of Ireland's changing history. One of its most striking features is the Minute Tower, a massive bell tower rising about 141 feet. Rebuilt in the 14th century after a fire, its height and pointed spire have made it one of the highest points in the skyline of historic Dublin. The cathedral is also home to the Door of Reconciliation, a weathered wooden door with a roughly cut opening at its center. This artifact bears witness to one of the most famous stories of Irish tolerance. Killarney Hill offers one of the most commanding views around Dublin, where the land opens toward the sea, the bay, and the rising line of the distant mountains. At the summit stands the obelisk built in 1742. Tall, narrow, and sharply pointed, the structure rises prominently above the hill as a striking stone landmark. Its clean vertical form contrasts with the softness of the surrounding slopes. What makes Coney Hill especially memorable is this combination of openness and structure. The natural setting provides the sweep and atmosphere, while the obelisk gives the summit a clear sense of purpose and permanence. County Donegal is emerging before our eyes as the most pristine and magnificent chapter in Ireland's history, where rugged terrain and the vast ocean create an identity completely separate from the rest of the island nation. It is known for some of the country's highest sea cliffs, some of its most untouched beaches, and one of the strongest surviving centers of native Irish identity. It is also home to the largest Gaeilge-speaking community in the country, giving the region a cultural presence that feels both deep-rooted and very much alive. Among its most mysterious and spiritually significant places is Lough Derg, one of the most sacred pilgrimage sites in Ireland. Set on a small island within the still waters of the lake, it has long been associated with penance, endurance, and inner reckoning. For more than 1,500 years, pilgrims have come here in search of repentance and spiritual renewal, making it one of the most demanding pilgrimage traditions in Europe. This site is also associated with the legend of St. Patrick's Purgatory. According to legend, St. Patrick was shown a cave on the island, where believers could witness the punishments of purgatory and the joys of heaven. Although the cave was originally closed and later a chapel was built in the 18th century, its presence continues to shape the island's atmosphere and the significance associated with it at Slieve League. The natural landscape of Donegal displays its most raw and pristine appearance, where the boundary between land and ocean is not just a geographical coordinate, but a breathtaking visual experience. Rising about 1,972 feet above sea level, they are among the highest sea cliffs in Europe, standing nearly 3 times higher than the cliffs of Moher. One of the most unique details here is the EI sign, a giant inscription made of white stones on the ground dating back to World War II. This sign informs pilots that they are flying over neutral Irish airspace. Amidst the immense scale of the terrain, life in Slieve League maintains its inherent tranquility. The sight of sheep peacefully grazing at the edge of the cliff creates a striking contrast between the serenity of grazing life and the harshness of the vertical landscape. At the base of these cliffs are a series of sea stacks shaped over time by relentless Atlantic weather. Seen from Bunglass Point, some of these formations appear almost sculptural with quartz and sandstone, worn into forms that resemble a massive table and chairs set beside the water. Between the stacks lie sea caves that can only be reached by boat when conditions are calm. Inside, reflected light catches the patterns in the rock, creating shifting colors that give the coastline an almost unreal quality. Malin Head marks the northernmost point of mainland Ireland. The highest point here is Bomba's Crown, named after Bomba, one of the ancient goddesses associated with Ireland in Celtic tradition. The name gives the headland a mythic quality, linking this stark northern edge to the island's oldest layers of identity. Another of Mullen Head's most dramatic natural features is Hell's Hole, a deep and narrow chasm where Atlantic waves crash in with tremendous force. The impact sends up towering bursts of white spray and a thunderous roar, giving the site a raw intensity that fully matches its name. Nearby stands Lloyd's Signal Station, a stone tower built in 1805 during the Napoleonic era to watch for a possible French invasion. In later years, it took on a different role as an important communication site, receiving some of the earliest commercial signals from ships crossing the Atlantic. Malin Head also features its own Erie 80 sign. The northern geographical boundary has become a focal point of legendary tales and missions of national defense over the centuries. Ahead, the Fenad Head Lighthouse stands majestically on the rugged cliffs above Lough Swilly Bay like a steadfast sentinel guarding one of Ireland's harshest Atlantic seas. It was built in 1817 after the wreck of the HMS Salana. Its white tower, rising about 72 feet, stands out sharply against the dark blue water and the greystone around it, giving the entire site a strong and unmistakable presence. It guards the entrance to Loft Willie, one of Ireland's few true deep-water fjords. Sometimes called the Lake of Shadows, the inlet carries a darker, more mysterious atmosphere, adding a quiet depth to the landscape around the lighthouse. The highest peak in Donegal is Argyll, with its pointed pyramidal structure and silvery white quartzite rock formations that gives it the appearance of a snow-covered peak even in summer. The mountain slopes above change color dramatically depending on the light. In bright sunlight, the mountain appears brilliantly illuminated and reflective. By evening, it can shift to pale pink and deep purple tones. Argyll also has two summits linked by a very narrow ridge known as One Man's Pass. County Antrim is where nature displays some of its most spectacular geometric formations, highlighted by the majestic Giant's Causeway, standing proudly on the northern Irish coast. The great columns of stone are where tens of thousands of stone pillars rise along the coastline in bizarre shapes. It is also the first UNESCO World Heritage Site in Northern Ireland, giving the site both geological and cultural significance. Along this stretch of coast, around 40,000 dark basalt columns rise from the shoreline and the sea, creating one of the most distinctive natural landscapes in Europe. These stones were created around 50 to 60 million years ago, when volcanic lava cooled rapidly after meeting the sea. The shrinking process created perfectly aligned geometric cracks, mostly hexagonal in shape, forming a rocky pathway leading straight to the sea. The most striking section is known as the Grand Causeway, where the columns spread out into a broad level surface like an immense natural pavement. Located along the picturesque Antrim coast, the Carrack Reid Cable Stayed Bridge connects the mainland to the small rocky island of Carracar Reid, spanning a chasm about 66 feet wide and hanging nearly 100 feet above the sea below. The island itself is small, but it held real strategic value for salmon fishing. For generations, fishermen used the island as a working base, and it still holds an old fisherman's cottage that reflects that earlier life. The first rope bridge was erected in 1755 by salmon fishermen. Initially, it consisted only of a single rope handrail and sparsely spaced wooden planks. Fishermen had to carry heavy baskets of salmon across this bridge in storms to bring the fish from the island to the mainland. Dunluce Castle stands on the very edge of a steep basalt cliff, where the sea and the rock together created one of the strongest natural defensive positions in Ireland. To reach it, visitors must cross a narrow stone bridge spanning a deep drop, an approach that still conveys the castle's original sense of control and isolation. Its surviving cylindrical stone towers, shaped in the 16th century, the architectural influence of the great lords of Scotland and Northern Ireland who held the site. Just outside the entrance lie the remains of Dunluce Town, a prosperous settlement established in 6008. Archaeological excavations have uncovered cobbled streets and the foundations of stone merchant houses, revealing a planned town that was later destroyed during the uprising of 1641. From its cliffs to its vibrant cities, the island has always maintained its own distinct rhythm of life, detached from the noise and dangers of modern times. It is this inherent stability and pride in its identity that has established Ireland's irreplaceable position on the world map today.